Hey everyone, we're going to talk about Kanye's week of gallivanting around. On Monday, he was in LA and did an interview with TMZ. On Tuesday, he went to Detroit and met with a couple places and companies. And then Wednesday, he was in Miami. And then today, Thursday, he was back in Chicago doing some things. And I wanted to get into some of the planning that might be going on as it relates to Yeezus and Kanye's long-term goals, and a life lesson. That's right, a big life lesson to take away from this, because I think it's one of the cool things that Kanye does that I think all of us can kind of take some inspiration from and, use in our own day-to-day lives. So let's get into some of the overview. First, setting context. On the 30th of September, just last week, Kanye tweeted, "Yeezy is a for-purpose arm of Apple." The key phrase there is just Yeezy is a for-purpose, in this case, as he showed, nonprofit. And nonprofits are typically associated with civic engagement, some sort of community building, community development, helping people. And this is something that Kanye has talked about wanting to do and turning his attention towards. Specifically wanting to help reinvigorate and re-energize Chicago in certain areas. He's talked about building schools. He's talked about putting a Yeezy factory in Chicago and bringing jobs and helping build up. And you think that that's something that Kanye might just jump into, that he's been successful in other areas, has that ego, and he's like, I'm just going to go do it. But that's not quite the path that he's taking with it. It's much more slow burn, cautious in a way, I would say. And I have examples of how he's doing that. And just to explain this a little bit, in case this tweet confused anybody, when he's saying that Yeezy is a for-purpose arm of Apple, we unofficially work for Steve, Johnny, Tim, and Lorraine. We know that Kanye really idolized Steve Jobs. He talks about Steve Jobs all the time. And he had tweeted that the same way Apple made the laptop beautiful, they want to make the world beautiful, or Apple the world, I think was how he tried to phrase it. So I think this is more Kanye's being inspired by Steve and kind of carrying the torch of Steve Jobs. So even though he's not technically a branch of Apple, it's in more the canonical lineage sense of like, I'm inspired by Steve Jobs and I'm going to take up the work that Steve Jobs did. We work with Apple in that capacity. So moving forward from there. A few days before that, Kanye had said, words and names are vital when bringing something like the school into existence. School. Couple thoughts. DAO, the word for this concept, DAO, indicates a way in the sense of a road or path. Dojo is a hall or space for immersive learning or meditation. This is traditionally in the field of martial arts, but has been seen increasingly in other fields such as meditation and software development. Then he brings that all together. The term literally means place of the way. So the place where the path happens or the way happens. In Japanese, schools will be dojos. So we can see Kanye taking this kind of idea of how do we take something that's so like fundamental as school and elevate it to something elegant. And not just elegant, but functional in a way. And in this case, a dojo has a connotation of being a place of singularity and calmness and focus, and where you can kind of get away from the world and get in touch with yourself and your skill that you're developing. And here he's talking about schools in that way. I think currently most of us might agree that schools are chaos. You jump from subject to subject to subject to subject, and you have all these people, all this drama. It's not an ideal kind of dojo. So you could kind of imagine Kanye envisioning something much more idyllic, something much more functional and elegant. And then just a few days later, he's in Detroit. And you can see this man here in this grainy ass footage. Looks like a Bigfoot video. This is Dan Gilbert. You may be familiar with Dan Gilbert's name, usually connected to the Cleveland Cavaliers, as he's the owner of the Cavs. The well-documented tumultuous relationship with LeBron James over the years. But he also owns Quicken Loans, Fathead, who did the wall decals of athletes, a casino in Cleveland, StockX, which this is the StockX office, which is the shoe market reseller, and a few other companies. He has been a huge part of the attempted revitalization of Detroit over the last decade. And you can see this is one of the booklets that has been put out by Quicken Loans and Bedrock Detroit, which is the real estate company that Dan Gilbert runs. And for more than profit, Detroit Impact. You know, for more than profit has the same ring as, say, a nonprofit or, how did Kanye phrase it? A for-purpose company. So we know that Dan Gilbert is looking to do something for more than profit. And Kanye went to meet and learn from him directly. And that's one of the key things that I'm going to be talking about is just we see Kanye, whether it's in music, rapping, fashion, whatever, he looks architecture, art, he goes to masters and talks with them, learns from them. He recently was in a TMZ interview that was just him coming out of a diner and a TMZ guy's like, Kanye, what's up? Answer questions. And Kanye said that he doesn't have all the answers now. He's not smart about everything right now, but it was that same way for him when he started producing. He wasn't the best. And then he got better and better over time as he collected information. Same with rapping, and that he's in that spot now with everything that he's doing. He may not be smart on all of this stuff now, but he was better when he came back to TMZ the second time because he learned from the first experience. We just happened to witness him at the very basic beginner levels of all of this stuff and seeing a lot of the ignorance and I don't know, missteps. But, you know, he's a smart guy and he's learning and he's talking to people, and meeting with Gilbert is part of him going, okay, I have this idea. I have no fucking idea what I'm doing. How have other people done it? And so this is a quick overview of the work Gilbert's done. He's already bet $5.6 billion on Detroit's future. And there are a few stats here. Gilbert moved his mortgage company Quicken Loans to downtown Detroit in 2010 and founded his real estate firm Bedrock a year later, when the city was just a few years from bankruptcy. Bedrock has invested or allocated a total of $5.6 billion across 100 or so properties. Said it has 98% occupancy of office and residential properties, which is insane. And this is also crazy. Gilbert's family of companies employs 17,000 people and is the largest employer and taxpayer in Detroit. Its level of influence on a major American city is unprecedented. And there has been a major upswing in Detroit from even, 15 years ago. I was in college in Cleveland from 2005 and 2009, and I saw firsthand the state that Cleveland was in, which wasn't good at all. And people would talk very often about the state Detroit was also in. And it's hard to just imagine seeing Cleveland and thinking like, this is sad at this point, and seeing people wanting better and not knowing what to do, and knowing Detroit was in a similar stance. And both cities have seen upswings over the last decade, which has been amazing. But there is controversy. With this influence comes critics skeptical of Gilbert's ability or desire to transform the city in a way that's inclusive of its majority Black and working class populations, a criticism he's responded to with increased outreach and partnerships. Whenever there's a revitalization of an area, you always have this specter of gentrification that kind of worms its way in there. And that's absolutely going to be something that Kanye will have to deal with at some point. Is it something that's just inherent, one of the evils that is mixed in with the positives? Kind of like driving a car. Cars have made society better, but people are going to crash. There's going to be injuries, death. do we just have to accept that? Or is there a way to improve it, refine, do better, be better? Hopefully someone like Kanye can find some answers, you know? But learning from Gilbert and taking away from him a lot of things, I think, is a big positive. And there's also an article here, if you want to read that, about how Gilbert has helped fight blight, specifically in Cleveland and Detroit. And blight means more so just the areas that have been condemned or run down that aren't used for anything anymore, and making them into something that is being used. So going from a boarded up house to, you know, clearing it out and getting things ready for something new to be put in. But then they ended up on Wednesday down in Miami, and they were at Pitbull's School Slam. And you can see that this guy here, who Fernando, that's his name. You can see Fernando here, the Philip Seymour Hoffman looking motherfucker who started it, and Tony Robbins, who's been doing a tour with Pitbull, which is kind of crazy. They took Kanye through what's going on at Slam, what Slam does. Slam got started in 2013, and you might be wondering why Kanye, of all the schools that he could possibly visit in the world, why go to this one? But you might already be putting two and two together. Pitbull is somebody else that came up from not fantastic means, very low socioeconomic, and made it big in the music industry. And through the wealth that they accumulated, is trying to give back to the community through this school. Kanye's in a very, very similar situation, and it makes sense that he would go to somebody else who's been in as similar as a situation as possible, to find out what Pitbull did and take away some of the key strengths from it and avoid some of the pitfalls that Pitbull had to deal with. One of the cool things about Slam is that it's not just the standard liberal arts education. We're getting English, math, science, history, you know, all of that well-rounded broadness, but maybe not necessarily the depth. Slam caters to sports leadership and management. There was an article I read where they talked about how a lot of kids that go to Slam dream of having professional careers in sports, but from the athlete perspective. And typically, very few people make it as a professional athlete. And if that's all that you've trained for, when that dream doesn't happen, what do you have to fall back on? What Slam is trying to do is show kids that you can love sports and you can try to make that dream of being a professional athlete come true, but we're also going to help you prepare for a profession in the sports industry that isn't necessarily athletes. And you can see that they focus on sports medicine, digital television and sports media production, sports marketing, entertainment, and management. So very specific curriculum and niche that's not going to be for everyone, right? But for the people that are interested in those fields and know early on, like, I'm okay with not getting a history background. I'm okay with not getting science because I want to go into this field. I'm sure you can make arguments about, you know, the breadth of the liberal arts degree being helpful and just having a understanding of the world around you. If somebody never gets any kind of biology education, what won't they know? And what will that lead to? But at the same time, if kids want to focus on a specific topic, having a school that engages them and allows them to develop in a field and get a career and find a passion without forcing science on them, I think that's also a good thing, right? One of the things that jumped out to me about the numbers, there was an article I read that talked about how the education at Slam hadn't been great so far. It had received C's every year from Miami's ratings board of how it's been educating kids. And you can see 2014, 2015, 2016, C, C, C. With 2017, they got a B. But I think it's kind of crazy to condemn the academics of a school that's just in its first 3 years of being, especially when they're trying to establish a culture in a socioeconomic context that may not be used to the kind of values that are trying to be instilled, and may not be used to the education style that is being put in. They're still finding teachers. They're still working out kinks. So the fact that they were at a C and made it up to a B within 4 years, I think is actually much more promising than negative. But then the number that stood out to me the most was graduation rate. You look at the graduation rate, and it's 92.4% in 2015-2016, 91.7% in 2014-2015. Compare that to the district, which was at 80, and the state, which is also at 80. That's incredibly high. Incredibly high. So even if the school had some issues with how it was educating or the grades of students, at the same time, they're still graduating a number far higher than what other schools in the district and state are doing. And they had 540 kids in the school. I think that's awesome that they're kids getting degrees that if they were in the regular school system may not have graduated. But yet at SLAM, they're getting to take that next step, or at least have a degree that will allow them to do something they may not have had the opportunity to do. So I think whatever criticisms could be leveled at a charter school or at, you know, a Pitbull school, there's still good being done, and that it's a positive that Kanye went there. But today, Kanye went back to Chicago, and first he looked at this area that was at State and Wabash. I'm so sorry. And these are some of the buildings that he's looking at buying for the Yeezy factory. He said that in one of the earlier videos. And nearby is this XS tennis and education nonprofit. And he met with the, director of operations to hear more about what's going on. So I just thought it was a nice tie-in that he goes and learns from Dan Gilbert, who is building companies that are employing people, and how Gilbert did that. And then went and learned from Pitbull and saw how Pitbull is incorporating education and sports to help inner city, lower socioeconomic kids latch on to an education that they want to invest in and find a career in. And here we see Kanye go back to Chicago and look at, okay, what am I going to purchase? And then talking to another education-minded, community-driven, sports-centric program that's local to Chicago. And I'm sure he'll synthesize what he learned at SLAM, look at what he's learning from XS, and we'll see what Kanye does. I'm sure this isn't the last of the conversations he's going to have, but it gets into the big life lesson that I wanted to talk about, and that is continuing education and knowing that even if you're great at these other things, that skill development isn't based on just your talent. If you have talent, that doesn't mean that you're just going to be able to go and do something great, even if you were great in this one area. You're always a beginner at the other thing that you do. The fact that most people will have skills that they can bring to bear, perspective that they can bring to bear, means that they can accelerate through the process faster than other people might. But it's still a process of recognizing, I don't know anything and I need to learn. Kanye isn't using his ego to say, I know what I need to do. I'm Kanye West. Let's go do it. He's saying, I'm only Kanye West because I learned and I failed and I tried and I did 5 beats a day for 3 summers, right? Like, it's work, it's sweat. You got to be on your grind. And here he is trying to do something new again. That's not music, it's not fashion, and he's starting at the beginning of the process. He's finding mentors, he's talking to them, he's learning from them, and he's synthesizing that with what he knows. He's going to bring in people that know what's going on, that can help guide him. And that's something that we can all do in our own lives. Just recognize that we don't always have all the answers, and we don't need to have all the answers. It's okay to go and ask questions. It's okay to feel like a kid again and need to learn from somebody, and that's okay. You'll learn, you'll grow, and every mistake is just an opportunity for more learning. That's something that Kanye says with all the shit that's going on with his political statements, is that he speaks out from this place often of ignorance, but the reaction to the things that he says helps him learn. Not just what other people are thinking and feeling, but facts, because people throw a lot of information at him to correct him. So it's almost like you go fishing with the wrong statement, which is not something I advocate doing. Kanye's in a very unique position, but it just shows that you don't have to be perfect, right? You just have to want to learn more and go about learning more in the way that suits your learning style. For Kanye, that's causing immense controversy and backlash, but the dude learns. For somebody else, it might just be reading a bunch of books. It might be emailing or calling a bunch of people, taking people out for coffee and asking questions and learning from that, getting jobs. I mean, Kanye went and interned at Fendi for a year. He didn't just say, I'm going to make clothes and everybody's going to love it. Motherfucker went and interned for a year at a major fashion house where he was grabbing coffee and doing all the basic shit to get an idea of how the process went. If Kanye can do that, you can do that. So don't be afraid to feel like a beginner. Don't let your ego get in the way. Just go and start learning, ask questions, and grow. If you want to read a good book on it, Talent Code is a great book that deconstructs the myth of talent and shows how skill development actually goes, both neuroscientifically, but also just the actual process. It's a book by Daniel Coyle. Highly, highly recommended. I think that does it for this video. Next week, I'm going to do a bunch of 3 things videos where I talk about the 3 things I like most from a song or find most interesting from a Kanye song. So I'll be doing, I think, 5 videos of that. So in the comment section here, just list what 5 songs you want me to do, and I'll pick some of the most popular ones, most requested, and focus on those for the 5. Any discography song, maybe only one in all day, some of those, but let's not get too crazy with like that part. Now everybody's gonna put that part on their list. But pick what you want, I'll get to it. And if you have any other video requests, let me know. I really appreciate if you take the time to subscribe and like, just as, you know, we finally got the 1,000 subscribers so we can monetize the channel, and now it's just, you know, getting some more money. But I'll also be making a lot of Kanye content going forward. So if you want to join in for more Kanye content, subscribe. Have a great weekend. Talk soon.